these are some money habits I realized that when I was younger kept me broke. And I don't want you to face these challenges as well. So let's go for a walk and we'll talk about it. So the first one, and really most of these are, when I was in my late teens and early 20s. So my first one is I was too conservative for too long. And what really drove that is, I've always been a good saver. And I've always been interested in the stock market. I mean, when I was a teenager, I used to go to the library and read the Wall Street Journal or look at the stock section of the newspaper. That's how you used to get your stock quotes, was once a day. You'd look in the newspaper, and sometimes on the news, they'd have quotes for some of the larger companies. So there was no way to look up stock prices online. And, I was this weird kid that was interested in the stock market and in investing from a very young age. And when I was 15 or 16 years old, I made my first investment in the stock market. And I've always had a job really since the time I was like 7 or 8 years old. Just, little jobs, honestly, being paid like a quarter an hour back then. Eventually, I remember when I got up to $1 an hour. But anyways, I had read, the power of if you put your money in an IRA when you're young and that can grow and what that can become. And so I was super excited to open up my first IRA. My parents had to co-sign the paperwork, but I did have the earned income, so I was able to do that. And my very first investment, I remember I went in and I talked to the stockbroker. This was not a fiduciary to me. But anyways, my very first investment lost like 25% of its money super quickly. And meanwhile, the fees were pretty high on this investment. So I'm down 25% in a matter of months. I'm seeing the fees that I'm paying on this account. And I was probably 16 years old, 15 or 16 years old, and I blew out of the investment. And I think I put like $2,000 in, so for me to be down 25%, that's $500. And when you're making $1 an hour, that's 500 hours of work. So after that experience, I decided stocks weren't as much fun as I thought they were for a period of time. And then I kept all my money in the stock market. Now, this was back when interest rates were fairly high. You could get 5 to 8%. In CDs in the bank, and that's what I ended up doing. So, the impact was not terrible because interest rates were so high. And in fact, I wish I had bought some of those long treasuries, 30-year treasuries that were paying over 10% back then. That would have worked out nicely. But my first money mistake that kept me broke was just being overly conservative, particularly when you're that young. With my money. Now, the reality is, I needed the money for college. So being conservatively invested was not a horrible thing. But really until I got done with college and hired my first financial advisor, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit, I was too conservative in my investments. So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two was, it's hard to admit these things, but trying to impress people. I paid for my way through college on a military scholarship and paid for a lot of it myself outside of the military scholarship. And my friends at school came from families that, their families were paying their way through college and had bought them a car. I didn't have, access to a car for my first 2 years in college. And, frankly, I was a little jealous. And so the second mistake that I made was trying to impress. Now, again, I've always worked hard. I've always had an income. And my undergrad was in engineering. So over the summers, I would intern. I interned at a company called British Petroleum. Some of you might know it. They have some of the largest oil fields in Alaska and happen to be the U.S. headquarters is inside of Cleveland, Ohio, and I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So that was my first intern job where I was really making decent money. And instead of saving that money and investing it, I decided to buy a used sports car that had some mechanical issues. I've never been really, really good with fixing cars, but back then they had repair manuals. You could check them out at the library or buy one at an auto parts store, and it would, you'd buy it for the specific car, and it'd say, here's how to change the brake calipers, and here's how to change the tie rod ends and stuff like that. So I'd read the manual and I'd work on it. But long story short is I had a Datsun 280ZX. I was trying to remember what year I bought it, but it was the beginning of my junior year of college. Datsun 280ZX. It was a fun little car. Probably, if you're ever going to have a sports car, having a sports car when you're young enough to really enjoy it, that was not a good financial decision, but it was a good life decision. I had a lot of fun with that car. But what really drove that was trying to impress. So that was another mistake. The other one was I've never really been much for budgeting. I've always said, well, if I can just set a goal that I want to save X dollars a year, what does it matter what I spend my money on? But my wife's a good budgeter. And so when she started, tracking the things that we were spending our money on, I got married after college. I realized, I was spending a lot of money in areas that I didn't know. And while I was hitting my savings goal, I could have been doing better. So my third mistake was not budgeting. My second mistake was doing things to impress people. And on the subject of spending money in ways that probably was not as wise as it could have been. I spent a fair amount of money when I was in college going out. This was in the day before dating apps. So if you wanted to meet girls, you had to, head out. And so I would go to frat parties, frankly, or the bar scene. I wasn't much into drinking, but I was into trying to meet girls. And probably spent more money than I should have when I was young doing things like that. So I've shared on this channel before in my videos that I had a lot of fun in my 20s, and I don't regret that. But that was some money decisions that I was making that was hurting me. I spent too much money going out. We did not have Cupid.com, and I guess Tinder's the popular app now. We didn't have any of that. If you wanted to meet girls, you had to go out. Typically meant, out to dinner, out to a bar, wherever you could to meet girls, and probably spent much more money than I should have doing things like that. Okay, so that's number 3 or 4. The next money mistake was I really didn't have a mentor that knew kind of the ropes. How do you invest without losing your butt? It's probably one of the reasons I got into the industry was because I got burnt when I was so young. And I became a student of, how do you do this successfully? A student of folks like Warren Buffett and Benjamin Graham, and people like that, Howard Marks, really experts in the field to say, okay, how do you do this successfully? How do I get the odds in my favor? But early on, I did not have a mentor. Again, hired my first financial advisor shortly after I graduated undergrad. And that was a really good decision because he was able to show me, not just here's how you do it successfully, right? Just the basics. I didn't know the basics, or I was too focused on trying to hit a home run as opposed to just a series of singles and doubles, which is really all you need to do. So, just the basics of diversification and how to do research to make sure that you've got a good, they didn't have exchange traded funds back then. You've got a good mutual fund. How do you diversify a portfolio? And most importantly, have a plan. So at the time I was 21 or 22, by the time you're 25, this is kind of what the goal is. Have a plan so that you can see how am I doing versus plan. So, in my case, just because I'm saving X dollars a month, maybe I should be saving a little bit more. Or probably the biggest one was I was still too conservatively invested when I hired my first financial advisor, and he showed me, look, you're young, you're in your 20s, you're 100% in bank CDs, you're not going to beat inflation doing that. So you need to take some risk. You need to get comfortable with risk. So that's another one that was helpful for me. Okay, real quickly, I've got two more that I want to go through, and hang with me, because the last one is a mistake I think we all make that steals joy from us, and I think can have big leverage for us. So I'll just keep going here. The other money mistake that I made was really, I grew up in a family that didn't believe in investing, right? They had, their parents had gone through the Great Depression. My grandparents were first generation immigrants, and they were big believers in, frankly, money under the mattress and having access. Because they had seen bank failures, even money in the bank seemed risky to them, let alone investing in stocks that, what do you mean you can lose 25% of your money in a couple of months? That doesn't sound like a good game plan. So because that was kind of the mental attitude in my family. And frankly, when I opened this IRA and said I wanted to put it in the stock market, the family's expectation, my mom and dad's expectation, my brother and sister's expectation is, you're going to lose your shirt in this really quickly. And it turned out that they were right, but for the wrong reasons. And so that was like a mindset that I had to get over. Okay, so those are the money mistakes that I realized were keeping me broke. Fortunately, I was able to get over those at a fairly young age. I want to put them out there in case you're suffering from any of these. So what do you do if you're suffering from any of these? And I want to get to this last item, so I'm just going to briefly share. That's what financial advisors can help you with. And you want to make sure that, when somebody's helping you deal with a challenge like this, that they have your best interest in mind, that they're not trying to sell you something. And so personally for me, I would want to work with a fee-only financial advisor. You can find one just by Googling that term, fee-only financial advisor. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just the importance of, investing in yourself and doing what you need to do to get comfortable, to get the advice that you need, so that you can come up with a game plan. Boy, just having a game plan is enormously valuable, to know, okay, what am I trying to achieve? And just knowing that you can weather through a storm, getting that asset allocation right, and not panicking like I did when I was, 15 or 16 years old. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, do me a favor, hit the like button. It does help other people find the channel. Leave me a comment. I love reading the comments. And until next time, I'm Azul, encouraging you to take full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, we're only young once. Let's use our time wisely.